Hey everybody.
You're at 109 right now.
So I just stepped outside to search for a UFO. My mom sent me a message asking me, "Do you see the UFO?" And I'm like, "What?" I was in the middle of recording my podcast. I was getting into it, getting good, and I was distracted. No, there's nothing outside. No UFOs. They're not even in Los Angeles. My mom is not even in my mom and dad are not even in Los Angeles right now. Anywho, asking me if I see something in the sky. I do not. Let's get back to the story. Today is October 11th. It is now 9:58 p.m. And I started this podcast at 9:54 p.m. It's now 4 minutes have passed. Anywho, um I did a lot to explain the um the podcast. I was explaining how what 109 means and who I am. My name is Tokyu. Tokyu in Japanese means 109. To means 10. Q means 9. So I'm Tokyu. And, actually, I didn't even come up with that. That is something I discovered in Japan. I kept seeing Tokyu signs all throughout Tokyo, and I thought the Japanese were misspelling the name of their capital city until I realized until I learned that Tokyo is it's an abbreviation for like two Japanese names, but it also it is it a double entendre? It also has another meaning. So not only is it a truncated combination of two names, but it's also to that means 10 and then q that means 9. So it has more than one meaning. But anyway, I'm Tokyo. This is the IC 109 podcast, and I'm getting distractions, getting little messages and stuff, but whatever. We're gonna keep pushing. The point of this recording right now is to recall some of these stories, and I started with the story about how all of this came about, and the first time 109 uh, was, you know, the first time I noticed it or I made I made a big deal about it. It was around it was probably before 2007, but see, I had this car, or one of my first cars, or the first car that I purchased, the first car that I personally purchased, and my name was on the car loan or whatever. I put a personalized license plate on there, and the license plate was 109 LAW2. So 109 is my birthday, October 9th, and the LAW2, those are my initials, Larry Alfred Wiggs the second, right? So that was the very first time that I called for the spirit of 109 to come to life for me. Let me see, incantation. What's an incantation? I'm looking it up here. Incantation is a formula of words spoken or sung to have a magical effect, or the act of reciting such words. An incantation. Do they have a magical effect? Perhaps the putting my birthday on my card, that was the first incantation because it had a magical effect of like setting the path of what was to happen. I guess I don't know. Anywho, I wasn't making any money in Los Angeles in 2007 because I wasn't gainfully employed, and that was a bummer because I had bills. I had a car I was trying to pay for. You have to pay for rent to live on your own. You need a job that is going to pay you so that you can earn money and save money. Man, once I got my college degree, none of that stuff was available. Like jobs, no, not at all. There was never a time when a job was like got me right. Anywho, um, 2007, I had to leave America because my situation was just getting worse and worse. And I left. I went to Korea to work. And what was so beautiful about working in Korea is all you had to do is meet a criteria. Did you have a university degree? Were you educated in English all the years of your education, like 13 years of education? And are you from one of the seven countries that they hire from? One of the seven countries being Australia, England, Scotland, Ireland, South Africa, the United States, Canada, and New Zealand. Oh, that's those are eight. Those are eight countries. All right. The United Kingdom or England, Ireland, Scotland, uh, South Africa, Australia, Canada, and the United States. Seven countries, right? As long as you were from one of those countries, had a college degree, and you spoke English, you could sign a contract for 1 year and you would have a job. You would have an apartment. The apartment was free, no rent. You paid no rent. Wow. That was a beautiful setup. So that was in South Korea. So I moved to South Korea and I could actually survive. I could live. I could breathe easily. Like things were different for me and it was a beautiful experience. When I was there in Korea, the first time 10/9 meant something to me in Korea was on October 9th because 10/9 in Korea is a holiday. It's the day on which they celebrate the Korean language. It's Korean, or rather, it's Hangul Proclamation, Promulgation, Hangul Proclamation, Promulgation Day. And because of the coincidence, the coincidental nature of my birthday and the day on which the country where I was living celebrated their language, I figured that that was a motivating factor for me to study their language. I was like, yo, it was like for me, being a black man in Korea, there were plenty of reasons for me to feel alienated, isolated, and to feel that I was outside of their culture. But when I thought about it, I said, you know what? I was born on the day that they celebrate their language. I said, I'm going to use that fact, that coincidence to motivate myself to learn the language. I mean, there were plenty of other reasons why I was motivated to learn the language, but that little detail right there, that was just a little detail that just, I added to all the other reasons to learn the language. And I rocked with it, and it was a cool thing. It was also cool that because my birthday landed on a national holiday, I didn't have to work. So that was that was awesome, right? So we go from my car having a license plate in Los Angeles to me having to abandon the car. I had to leave that car in LA. I eventually I did something silly. I think I sold that car and I bought I'm going back. I know I am going back. But back in time, I sold that car just before I was leaving for Korea. Like a couple of months before I left for Korea, I bought a new car. It it still had the same license plate on it, but I had a new car that I wasn't gonna drive because I was leaving the country. It was the weirdest. It was the like most backward thing possible. But anyway, I did that, and after doing that, I was in Korea, and I had a new car in Los Angeles. All right, so that's what happened. My mom sent me a message with this UFO thing. UFO over Los Angeles. No, I don't see. I didn't see any UFO over Los Angeles. And from where for where I am located, no, couldn't see it either. That would be interesting to see it if I could see it. It was in the air for 30 minutes before disappearing. That's interesting. Okay. So now, yeah, I bought the car and I left it in Los Angeles and I go to Korea. And the thing about me being in Korea is that I lived there for 9 years. So after a year or so with the car just sitting, well, I did return. I returned to Los Angeles a number of times. So every time I returned to Los Angeles, I had a vehicle. I had my vehicle, to drive, which was cool. That was very cool. That was my thing. I always had a car as soon as I came home. But then I had to store it. One year I had to store it in Las Vegas. My mom and dad had a home there. I put it in their garage. And then they tried to break into my car, damaged the key. I had to pay to get that fixed, and that was man, that was terrible. So, um, but anyway, that car had it's 10:09 right now. Right now it's 10:09 p.m. It's 10:09 p.m. There we go. All right. So there I was, or in Los Angeles. My license plate had my number 10:09 on it, and then I couldn't support myself in Los Angeles, so I went to Korea. Had my apartment. I didn't need a car in Korea, and then on my birthday, I learned it was on my birthday that I learned of this holiday because my Korean friends were celebrating the holiday, but I was like, but it's my birthday. And they're like, yeah, but we're celebrating our language. It's the day on which we celebrate our language. And I was just like, oh, okay. Um, but it was cool because they changed the law. They changed the law so that on that day, um, excuse me, it became a national holiday. Let me explain that situation. All right. So when I arrived in 2007, all right, 10/9, it was a holiday, but it was no longer recognized. It wasn't a national holiday. Banks were still open. People still had to go to work. In 2012, or maybe it was 2011, so it was 4 years after I was living in Korea when they changed it back to being a national holiday that everyone took off from work from. So in 2011, they changed the rule, and then in 2012, I was able to celebrate by having my birthday as a holiday. So it went from being a holiday to not being a holiday to back to being a holiday in Korea. And I lived through that changeover in Korea. And I was so delighted to have lived in Korea during that time because I got my birthday off. It was like, yo, this is dope. So there I was in Korea. I lived in Korea for 9 years and some change. And then Korea was good, but I had to escape from Korea sometimes. It wasn't like I was in North Korea trying to escape. I was just like lonely, black, lonely, bored, and I needed some distraction. So um, I went to Japan, for distractions. So let's see. Um, 2013, I think, was the first time I went to Tokyo. And when I went to Tokyo in 2013, what I remember was seeing Shibuya Ichimarukyu. Ichimarukyu means 109. And Shibuya 109 is the name of a teenage girl's fashion mall in Japan. And in 2013, I saw that building. I was in Tokyo for the first time, I think, 2013. I saw that building and I entered that building. That building. But I learned about it before I went to Tokyo, which is why it was even on my radar. See, I was in Korea and I was watching this video about how Japanese women tan their skin to make it darker, to make themselves blacker. And not only do they do that, but they also had this thing where they would, like, they were celebrating black culture. They were celebrating their affinity for black culture, whatever it is. Like, it's hip hop, it's reggae, it's jazz, it's dance hall, it's, yeah, rap. You know, whatever it is to them, they embraced it. And there was a shop called Baby Shoop. It doesn't exist anymore. In 2025, it no longer exists. Several years ago, you know, they closed their doors, but they had a good run. And when I was in Korea, I learned about the shop, and I was like, I I am Mr. Black Culture. I am Mr. Black American, Mr. Black Man, and I embrace black culture wherever I go. Which is why in Korea I didn't, feel so hot because Koreans didn't seem to. It's not like they Koreans weren't embracing, black culture the way that I would have appreciated it. I remember the number of times when I would walk, when I would startle a Korean, usually a Korean woman, and she would jump and say, "Oh, kamjagiya," because she didn't expect to see a black person. You know, it was just like, damn, these Koreans are annoying. I never startled Japanese people the way, I startled Koreans. So it was just an annoying aspect of life in Korea for me, which is why I wanted to go to Japan. And part of my trip to Japan was to go visit the girls at the mall for the teenage girls that they love black culture. And so I went there. Let me see. I went there. Did I go there twice? I must have been there twice. I had to have been there more than once. Like, all right, I went there one time, the very first time ever, and I noticed what I noticed. I saw different things and I was like, "Oh, okay, that's the spot." I think it was 2 years later when I went back and I bought some items for my niece. The second time that I was there, I bought items for my niece. But anyway, first time I was just going there to sightsee and just take in the sights. So I did that, and because the mall is called 109 or 109, Shibuya 109, I was loving that because I am Mr. 109, Mr. 109, Mr. October 9th, that's me in Japan. So 2013, I went to that mall. Did I tell you? I saw a video on YouTube. That's how I learned about the mall. And that's the video on YouTube talked about that shop. And they were saying the girls in Japan tan their skin. They have a shop in Japan. They were bringing a lot of attention to that shop. So I was like, yo, I want to go there. I'm Mr. Black America. I'm Mr. Black. I want to see all things that are black. If you appreciate black culture, if I want to find all the black stuff around the world. Around that time, I have been watching Tariq Nasheed's videos called Hidden Colors. My buddy Jumani told me about Hidden Colors. He actually mailed a copy of a DVD to my home in South Korea for me to watch. He told me about it, man. This is good stuff. It's a good documentary. You should watch it. And he mailed it to me. So when I watched it, my blackness, you know, solidified, it deepened. My curiosity in all things black, peaked because this documentary was about blackness. It was about being black. It was about black people around the world. So what they had done in their documentary is highlight black ideals, or rather Afrocentric ideals. And after watching that, I was inspired to make a search for what is black the main theme of my travels. So I wasn't just there to teach English, I wasn't there just to luxuriate in hotels. I was there to search out, to sniff out blackness. So in Japan, that sniffing out blackness translated into you got to go to that teenage girl mall where those girls tan their skin to be darker, and they love hip hop, and then everything is black. The slogan of the store, Baby Shoop, was Black for Life. Like, yo, that's wild, man. Black for Life, Baby Shoop. And they had just images of like 50 Cent and then Sean Paul and just blackness, just beautiful examples of, gorgeous, deeply melanated people. Like, wow, they were just in love with that. So that was their thing. All right. So that's what I did. I went to Tokyo to get away from to get away from the Koreans, who were like largely uninterested in black people, dark people, period. I couldn't find anyone who was really into, dark people in Korea. They didn't have, like, okay, let me give you an example. In Japan, you can find jazz, hip hop, reggae, like bars, clubs, music stores, or rather record shops. You can find places in Japan. You can find Japanese who are into black culture. And that is such a delightful experience. And they know their stuff. They're not wannabes, they're not posers, perpetrators. No, these are the real deal. So it was just amazing. Um, it was amazing to see, to experience, to be around that warmth, you know. So anyway, that was Tokyo in 2013 when I saw Shibuya Ichimaru-kyu, which it means 109. In 2013, between 2007 when I moved abroad to 2013, 14, and 2015, um, I didn't travel much. I was traveling between America, Japan, and Korea. And most of my time was spent in Korea. So I had this thing where I was trying to spend as much time in Korea because I worked there, I now live there. I was trying to stay there for 12 months at a time. I mean, physically stay in the country and just enjoy the whole year, enjoy Korea the whole year round. As much as I can, of course, when Koreans are annoying you, what can you do? Um, and I think in over the 9 years that I lived in Korea, the longest stretch of time that I spent solely in Korea was probably 9 months, right? I didn't go for a whole year, in Korea. 9 months was the longest amount of time because I was going back to America. I had vacations, and maybe I would go to another country, which for the first, what, five, 7, 8, the first 8 years, first 7 or 8 years, it was only Japan, the U.S., Yeah, and Korea. And then I did go to Taiwan 2012, but that was it. I wasn't adventurous. I wasn't going anywhere else. Um, but 2015 changed everything. That was a year for me that was a doozy. So what happened is, um, I was on a plane from Korea back to LA when, wait a minute, that's not how it happened. So I didn't have any money and I'm in Korea. And my dad asked me, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to just hunker down in my home in Korea," which was at the time a dorm room on a college campus. I was like, I'll just hunker down for 2 months because I had a vacation for 2 months. That particular job, I had 4 months of vacation with that job. I had a winter and a summer vacation, 2 months in each period. And I had a 9 hour work week. Nine. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. A 9 hour work week. It was a sweet job. I wasn't getting paid a lot, but for a 9 hour work week, it was great. Anywho, um, so what happened? So I didn't have a lot of money, didn't have any money saved. And I told my dad, he called me and said, "What are you doing to do?" And I'm like, "I'm just going to sit here for 2 months and then get back to work when the vacation's over." My dad was like, "Nah, that doesn't sound very productive. That doesn't sound good. I'll pay for your flight. Just come back to LA, spend time with the family." I said, "Oh, okay, I'll do that." So dad sends me the money. I buy my flight. I fly back to Los Angeles. Now I have an 8 week vacation, and I fly back to LA, and I spend 3 weeks in LA with my mom and dad and family. After 3 weeks in LA, I tell my dad, I'm gonna just I'm gonna change my departure. I'm not gonna spend the whole 8 weeks here in LA. I'm gonna fly back to Korea. Dad says, "Why are you gonna do that?" I said, "Well, I can find some summer positions, some summer jobs I can work and maybe make some money with during the last, 4 to 5 weeks of this vacation." My dad said, "You're an adult. If that's what you want to do, fine. You spent 3 weeks here with your family. That was good, important time to spend together. So we did that. If you want to do that, go ahead." I said, "That's what I want to do, Dad. I'll get some money so I won't be broke like this next vacation or whatever." He says, "Okay, go." This is 2015, and I spent 3 weeks in Los Angeles. I decided to go back to Korea earlier than was expected. I fly back to Korea, and I have a couple of jobs lined up, summer gigs. They're 4 week summer camps, and I fly back to Korea via Japan. I land in Japan, and one of the jobs is trying to reach me. Like they are serious about finding a teacher for their summer camp. So this call comes in while I'm in Japan. And I've got basically two jobs that I'm looking forward to, or like I'm looking at it like I got two jobs to choose from. So I'm taking my time getting back to Korea. That's where the jobs are. Well, when I got to Japan, I had a layover in Japan. I got a call from one of the employers, and they were asking me like, "Are you in Korea? Are you ready to, I don't know, maybe fill out some paperwork? Are you ready? We're going to have our first meeting. Are you going to be here in time?" Whatever they asked me, I was lollygagging. And I said, "I'm in Japan. I'm on my way to Korea. I'm making my way there. Let's talk later when I get to Korea." Something like this. That wasn't the response they wanted to hear. They wanted to hear me say, "I'm on my way. I will arrive on this date at this time, and I'm ready. I'm ready for any meeting. I'm ready to work for you." And That was the last time I spoke with anyone from that camp. Because when I arrived in Korea and I tried to call those people, I tried to contact them, no one tried contacting me back. So they were ready for me to confirm that I was going to work for them. I didn't do that, so they passed on me. So when I got back to Korea, all I had was one job, and that was actually the job that wasn't the most desirable. I had two jobs that I was looking at, and one was more favorable than the other one. I think I got confused by who was contacting me, and I was like, I'm not sure. I didn't know which job it was that was contacting me, and I was just like, yeah, I'm on my way. I'm in Japan. I'll be there tomorrow or whatever. Yeah, they didn't like that. So I got back to Korea, and I only had one job. So I said, well, I still have one job though. Let's make this one happen. So I went to the city to work in this other job. And when I got there, something threw me off. I realized that all of the teachers who were there were black. Not all of them, but most of them were black. They weren't only black, but they were like African. And this this was a red flag. These were red flags because Koreans don't mess with black or brown people like that unless they're going to take advantage of them. And so when I showed up, I looked at the situation and I was like, where are the white people? And they were mostly Africans. I was like, these Koreans have no intention of paying us. They're going to use us, waste our time, and they're not going to pay us. I can see it already. There have been plenty of times where Koreans took full advantage of Africans. They had Africans, like African nationals, come to Korea. They were performing, cultural at a cultural center, at the African center, but the conditions that they were staying in, that they were living in, were deplorable. And it was just like, are you kidding me? I remember when I read about that, that was just awful. So when I saw the situation and I thought, man, all of these teachers are black people, not even black people, but these are Africans. I'm like, man, they're about to run the okey doke on us. I said, man, I'm not doing this. I got to get out of here. So I remember I prayed. I was there. I told them I can't do this. There was a young woman who was deciding whether to stay or not. She was kind of like in my position, saying she was a Black American woman, but she had faith in the company, and she was like, let's pray on it." So I prayed with her. We actually stood there. I guess we held hands and we prayed. She decided to stay. I decided that I would leave. But we prayed together so that whatever decision we made, we prayed that they would be the right decisions for us. I don't know what happened to that program. I didn't stick around. I didn't communicate with anyone from that program, didn't stay in contact with anyone. I hope everything went well. But after I prayed and I told them I was out, well, there I was in Korea with no job to hold me over for the rest of the vacation. I had just flown back from Los Angeles, and I was in the same situation I was in before, right back to square one. And my dad called again and said, "So what happened?" And I said, "Well, I thought I was gonna work, but but the bottom, the floor dropped out from under me. These opportunities, you know, everything fell apart." So my dad said, "Well, come back home." And I'm like, "Huh?" Now, the first time my dad paid for the trip, paid for my flight, it was like $700, which he had, I didn't, you know. So this time dad was saying, "Well, just fly back to home." And I'm bugging because I'm like, I've never flown internationally only to stay somewhere for like 2 days and then fly back. So that was a head scratcher for me. It was like, that just doesn't make any sense. But my dad said, come on back home. And then in the in the broader sense, what I realized is there are businessmen and women who travel the world, and sometimes they make trips like that. They'll fly 10 hours to spend an hour or two in a meeting or spend a day in a country and then fly back somewhere else. Business people do that kind of commuting all the time. For me, it was something new. It was different. It was quite weird. But as long as I had a business person's experience to compare this new experience to, then for me, it didn't seem so weird. It was kind of normal. I was just doing something that business people do. So my dad was like, all right, here's another $700, book another flight, come back home. So as I'm flying home to Los Angeles for the second time in 1 week, right? Or maybe, or not the second time in 1 week, but I'm taking the same flight just in the opposite direction, you know, within 1 week. This is the second time. 10-hour flight minimum, right? Um, while I'm on the plane, I purchase access to the internet, and Melissa Watkins, a friend, very good friend of mine, well, she had information on a job in Peru, South America. We were part of the same group. We're part of the Brothers and Sisters of South Korea group. And so she sent this information to to the group. And I saw it, I picked up on it, and I said, "Hey, that's pretty cool." Okay. All right. So Melissa sends this blast, right? This post, and she's like, "Yo, there's a job in Peru if you're up for it." She sends this to everybody. Now, I'm in the air. I'm flying. I've got access to the internet, but I'm in the air flying from Korea back to Los Angeles. But I see a job, and I'm like, I know Melissa. She's going to post good stuff. Now, the reason why she was sharing this job information is because she was in Korea and she was busy. She was working. Now, in my case, I wasn't working because I had a 9 hour work week and I have 4 months of vacation as part of my package, my job. So I was on vacation. So Melissa was not on vacation. So that's why she was sharing this information. So I was looking at it like, I'm available. I could do this work. And what was great about it is that it wasn't in Korea. Because if I were in Korea, I would need permission to work outside of my primary job. That's a detail I didn't mention before. I mentioned the fact that those were Africans in that program in Korea, but the other reason why I did not join that summer program is because I thought that the Koreans were trying to skirt their responsibilities. They were trying to work around immigration laws, especially by hiring Africans. Like, you could pay them less. You can kick them out of your country. I mean, just some really bad stuff. It just looked like that. And then in my case, I had not received permission from my primary employer to work a summer camp. So if word got back to immigration that I worked outside of my original contract, I would have been in violation, and possibly they could have been looking at me to looking to deport me from Korea. And Korea was my bread and butter. That was the only way for me to survive because in Los Angeles I didn't have anything. So I said, man, I'm not risking all that these other people might be risking. Or maybe these people weren't even risking as much as me. I was like, I'm not doing that. I need my primary job, even if I'm not making any money or making enough money during the summer, then forget about it. So what I did is on this next trip that I was going back to Los Angeles from Korea, and I'm on the plane, and I've got Wi-Fi access, and I'm looking at this message blast from Melissa. I'm like, oh look, the job is in Peru. I don't have to ask for permission from Korean immigration to work a second job. I'm gonna be in a completely different country. So I sign up for this job, and while I'm in the air, mid flight over the Pacific Ocean, I shoot off this email with my resume and everything and all my years of experience teaching English. And I get a response that says, everything looks good on paper. You look like an excellent candidate. We would certainly hire you. We need you to just be on call, ready for more details. We'll fill you in later. And I was like, I'm in the air over the Pacific Ocean, and I'm like, oh snap, I just got a job. They just hired me. And on top of that, the the specifics, the amount that we were going to get paid, the amount of responsibility, it was a beautiful position. So basically, for 2 weeks worth of work, I was going to get paid $4,000 US cold hard cash. All of us who did that position, all of us who worked on it, $4,000 cold hard cash for 2 weeks worth of work. $4,000 at that time was 2 to 2.5 times what I made in any given month in Korea. There were some times in Korea when I made more money, when I did better, but consistently I was making like $2,000. So 4,000 was double what I was making, and sometimes that 2,000 I was actually earning less than 2,000, like 1.8 or 1,800 or something like that. So that would be like 2 point, whatever. Anywho, look, that Peru position was amazing. So what happened is when I landed in Los Angeles, my mom picked me up from the airport. She was like, "Welcome home, son." And I was like, "Mom, I know you and Dad paid for my flight for me to come back to LA, thinking that I'm going to stay in LA for the remainder of my vacation." I told them, "But no, I'm actually going to fly to Peru to work." And they were like, "Oh, well, that's fine. You got some work. You got some work to do. No problem. Great. Good for you." They're like, "When are you leaving?" And I'm like, "I don't know." They're like, "Okay." So the week, so it was a whole week that passed between the point when I landed and when I left for Peru. And although I had received an email confirmation saying that I had a job in Peru, during that week, that during the week after I landed in Los Angeles, that was a very stressful week because my dad kept asking me, "Son, when are you going to Peru? Son, when are you going to Peru? When are you leaving?" And I'm like, "I don't know yet, Dad. I haven't received confirmation, but they told me I'd be working in Peru." So I was like, when I hear something, I'll know something. But Dad just kept asking me, "Son, it's been 2 days. Son, it's been 3 days. What are you going to do? When you leaving?" "I don't know, Dad." So like 6 days later, I finally receive an email confirmation. Yes, here's your flight information. Here's the itinerary. This is what you're going to do. All of that information. So my faith was restored in this job that I was told that I was going to have. Thanks to Melissa Watkins. I've got to send her a gift because what she did was pretty doggone awesome. So, um, after a whole week, 6 days pass, I finally get confirmation, and Dad says, "Oh, okay, so this was a real situation. I was worried about you, son. You told me one thing, and I didn't see it happening." I'm like, "Yeah, Dad, I'm going to Peru." All right, so Peru, everything pans out. It's looking good. Get, I go to the airport. I cut my hair. I cut my hair bald. I go down the street and get a barber to cut my hair. He cut my hair so low. Oh, it was unbelievable. I hadn't had my hair cut that low before, or in a, I hadn't had it cut that low before ever. It was ski bald. I was like, oh hell no, man. But having a bald head was okay because I was gonna be in Peru for 2 weeks, and my hair was gonna be growing back, and I didn't want to have to deal with hair, you know. So I was like, cool. I'll just cut it all off, and then 2 weeks later it'd be longer. So we got to the airport I was at the airport with my mom and my dad, and my sister. They said goodbye. I'm going to Peru. That was it. Going to Peru. And 2 weeks later, we did the job. They gave us $4,000 cold hard cash for 2 weeks worth of work. They had us in these little motel rooms not far from the area where we were teaching. Every morning they would bus us to the location. We'd instruct classes. They would feed us. Everything was taken care of. It was a beautiful seminar, uh, retreat. Oh, it was just wonderful. So the next thing that happened is, well, a couple of things happened. Like I learned about Bitcoin that over that 2 week period from Lance. Lance was telling me about Bitcoin, and Bitcoin was worth $250 per coin, and he had been buying Bitcoin since it was since it was worthless. It was worth nothing, less than $1, and he saw that there was promise in it, and so he was like, "I'm just gonna keep buying it," and it was a gamble because everything was uncertain, but he saw that he was making money. And so he was telling everybody, you got to do this. You got to buy this thing called Bitcoin. And in 2015, it was difficult to buy Bitcoin. And I didn't do it. But man, I could have taken that $4,000 I earned. I could have bought, how many? Let me see. Let me do the math really quickly. How many for $4,000? 4,000 divided by 250? Yeah, 16. I could have bought 16 Bitcoin in 2015. Today, that's $100,000 minimum for each one. I would have $1.6 million today on a $4,000 investment 10 years ago. That really just like, whoa. But it sucks when you need money, because when you need money, you can't invest money. And so your future looks bleak because you need to have opportunities to invest, to put money aside to invest it so that your future doesn't look so bleak. If you can't invest, your future is just very unstable. All right, um So Peru ended. We got $4,000. Bitcoin was $250 then. Didn't buy it. Flew back to Korea, and that was 2015. In 2016, so I'm working in Korea still. Um, 9 hour work week, summer and winter vacations. So what happens is I go on my winter vacation, 2016, and I applied to work in Saudi Arabia. At the time, I live in Korea, I work in Korea, but I flew back to Los Angeles to, um, wait a minute, I jumped to 2016, and I just told you about how 2015, how I went to Peru in 2015. But the point of telling you all of that was to tell you that in 2015, life for me was very different. It was it was the experience of having it was the experience of having the job in Peru that brought me to South America for the very first time. And then in 2015, so in 2015, I went from Korea to Japan to America to Peru. And, when I was in America, I got my Chinese visa. So I had a 1 year visa for China, and I used it that year. So I went to China as well. Um, I had been to Okinawa. I went to Okinawa for the first time. Um, I went to the Philippines for the first time in 2015. And I had layovers. I had a layover in Panama and a layover in Canada. So between 2007, when I left America for Korea, and 2015, for 8 years, basically, I didn't travel anywhere. But in 2015, the amount of travel that I did was remarkable. 2015 was the craziest year of my life with regards to travel. I traveled everywhere over the world. I mean, I was in Korea, I went to Japan, went to America, Canada, Panama, Peru, the Philippines, and China. Like, oh my gosh, I was all over the place in 1 year. So that was dope. Um, what happened next? Well, um, so 2015 was a remarkable year, and coming off a high of having all of those experiences. I mean, the high of making $4,000 in 2 weeks, that was just tremendous. The high of being in South America for the first time, that just, South America opened my mind to the rest of the world. I was like, damn, I've never explored South America. Here I am. Like, this was a good experience. Like, I was so focused on Korea and Asia that I was forgetting about the other parts of the globe. So anyway, 2016 rolls by, and I'm in Korea working, but things are not working out in Korea. It's bad. The situation is just bad. Enrollment at the school is down. So I have classes, but the student body, the students are not enrolling in my classes. So my classes are being canceled. So the administration at the school decides, we're paying you for a 9 hour work week per semester. your classes have fallen to maybe like 5 hours a week. We will pay you, they propose this, we will pay you for a 9 hour work week this semester, but next semester, you're going to have to work, let's say, a 20-hour work week because you have to make up for what we paid you in the previous semester. And and then the problem with that is I would be doing double the work for less, for half the pay. And I was like, "Yo, you're trying to make me go into debt working for you. Like I'm doing that only because I owe you." And I'm looking at the situation like, okay, so there are just too many teachers here, right? You could limit the number of teachers, you fire some of these people, and then you could work it out so that no one has to work, no one has to go in debt one semester and then work double to pay you back. Like you don't have to do all that. So that was my contention. I was like, man, they're trying to put me into debt. They're trying to make me a slave here. So I looked for other options and I applied to work. I applied to work in Saudi Arabia. And I was making like in Korea, I was making like $2,000. In Saudi Arabia, I thought I was going to be making 4,000 a month. So I was already good with the change. I was like, we're going to Saudi Arabia. I'm making $4,000 a month. That's going to be good for me. So I applied for Saudi Arabia, and during the winter vacation, I was contacted, and they were like, "You look good on paper. We would like to hire you." And I was like, "Well, I still have a contract with these Koreans. I don't want to break a contract to start another job with you. I want to I want to honor my contract before I make some moves." So my employer said, "You know what? That sounds good. We wouldn't want you to break your contract. So let's get the paperwork processed. And when it's time for you to join us, you will join us." I said, "Yeah, let's do that." So I processed the paperwork over the months that I was working. And then when the summer vacation rolled around, um, I had a meeting in Korea and they were like, "Are you going to work with us? You're going to stay with us? You're going to stick with us?" And I was like, "I'm sorry, I've been looking at another job in Saudi Arabia." And they were like, "But you like working here in Korea. You want to work with us, right?" And I was like, "They're not listening to me." I told them I applied for a job in Saudi Arabia that they didn't get the hint. They don't know I have intentions of leaving and they're not even paying attention to me. So I just agreed. I said what they wanted me to hear. I said, "Yeah, I'll stay. I look forward to working with you again another year here in Korea." They said, "Good, Larry. Okay, enjoy your summer vacation, and we'll see you when you come back." I said, "Okay, guys. Goodbye." So over my summer vacation, I packed up my bags. I left a lot of things in the dorm room, but I packed up my bags and then I flew to Los Angeles to further process the paperwork and the little requirements to get to Saudi Arabia. And when the summer ended and when I was supposed to be back in Korea, I was not there. I was in Saudi Arabia. I got some little like hate messages from former colleagues. There, one guy called me an ass hat. He's like, "You're an ass hat for what you did." And I'm looking at the situation like, wait a minute. I was about to go into debt working for these people. I was like, I didn't sign up for that. Y'all tripping. You guys can figure out those classes, work a little bit more, and maybe even get some more money. I don't know. But I'm not dealing with y'all anymore. That school, no, I'm not dealing with that scenario. I'm out. And so I was in Saudi Arabia. Now, when I got to Saudi Arabia, I had made a terrible mistake, horrible error. You see, when I signed up to work in Saudi Arabia, I thought I was leaving Korea where I was making like $2,000 a month. I thought I was going to be making $4,000 a month in Saudi Arabia. I was wrong. I was going to be making $6,000 a month tax free. Man, I did not know. So going from Korea to Saudi Arabia was a boon for my bank account. It was a boon. It was, ooh, wait, that was some beautiful experience. I was getting that money, man. That money was, oh, that was so good. $6,000 tax free. You can't imagine what that was like. Tax free 6,000. Oh man, I got that money for 2 whole years. I had never seen money like that. And the money they were never late. It was always deposited on time. Like hit your bank account, bing, there you go. Like oh my goodness, that was lovely. Let me look this up really quick. Let me see. I remember 7,500 Saudi riyal. Well, how much is that? I remember that being um a number that I recall. Let's see. 7,500, I think. Hmm. 7,500. That's only $2,000. So was it like 15,000? I don't know. Well, you know what? They weren't paying us 6,000 in one lump sum. It was like every 2 weeks, I think. It was like 3,000 and then 3,000. That's how they paid it. 11,250. That's what it was. All right, whatever. I don't know. I might have seen 7,000 something in my account one time and remembered that. I don't know. Yeah, but they paid us well. We still have free apartments. So listen, no matter where I've lived internationally, I've never paid rent internationally. Whether it was South Korea, whether it was Saudi Arabia, whether it was, oh, I was about to say Oman. I'm sorry. When I was in Oman, I did pay. I paid rent there. Anywho, Saudi Arabia, man, that was crazy. Saudi Arabia was amazing. Um, Now here's the thing about Saudi Arabia. To get back, I was talking a lot about money and about the little details about working, and I really got off track when talking about 10/9. So let's get back to it. Um, Wait, let's go back to 2015. When I went to the Philippines in 2015, I noticed a goat. I saw a goat, and seeing the goat was a moment of synchronicity. It was a coincidence because 2015 is also the year of the goat or the ram, the sheep, whatever you want, or the lamb, whatever you want to call it. Um, it's the same year. So when I saw a goat, I thought of the year. I thought of the Chinese zodiac. That's my year. I'm the year of the goat. The goat, the ram, the lamb, the sheep, whatever. And when I was in the Philippines, I saw that. So that was a good little moment of synchronicity, 2015. And I thought seeing the goat was an auspicious moment. I thought, wow, that must mean that 2015 is a great year for me. And in fact, it was because of all the travel that I had done. So I was like, that was a good sign. So in 2015, yeah, I saw the goat. That was my birth year. I was born in 79. 79 is the year of the goat, so is 2015, right? All right, 2016, my luck continued. So I moved to Saudi Arabia in 2016. But you know what? Before I moved to between 2015 and 16, in 2015, let me make this clear. I went to Japan. I was in Fukuoka. I went to a temple. I took a picture with my hand. I believe it was my left hand, and I was rubbing the belly of the Buddha statue. And I have that picture because, as I understand it, rubbing the Buddha's belly was a sign of good luck. So there I was with a symbol of good luck. Again, so in the Philippines, I saw the goat in 2015, and then in Japan, I rubbed the belly. So that was another moment of good luck because the good luck came in 2016 when I was in Saudi Arabia making 3 times what I was making in Korea. Unbelievable, right? Just amazing. All right, now, so I'm in Saudi Arabia, and wait a minute, but there's still some stories about 10/9 that happened in Japan that I didn't mention. Like, let me go back. In Japan, all right, in Japan 2015, it was the weekend of my birthday. It was a 10/9 weekend. It was actually October 4th, if I'm not mistaken. I think I looked at the calendar recently to get the details to match them up. October 4th. It was October 4th, and I'm in Japan. Now, I was living in Korea, but I was going to Japan to escape, to just relax, get away from Korea, the rigmarole. I get to Japan, and I'm there because I'm celebrating my birthday the weekend before my birthday, right? Remember, I had a 9-hour work week in Korea, and so I probably had a Friday off. And I was like, after I get out of work, after I finish my classes on Thursday, I'm heading to the ferry terminal, and I'm getting on the next ferry to Japan. I want to be in Japan on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and come back on Monday to be there for my class whenever that begins. Right? I did that with that trip to China as well. I left Korea for China, and I came back the same day that I had to teach. And I had hours between my arrival back in Korea and the time when the class began. I had hours to get from the airport back to the campus. When I got back to the campus, I jumped in the shower, changed my clothes, and walked into the classroom like I had been in Korea all along. And my students had no idea I had just come back from China. And I was just like, "What's up, y'all?" I love that. So, all right. So it was my birthday weekend, and I'm going to Japan. So I left, and I got to Japan. Now, so 10/9 was on my mind. It was like I'm celebrating my birthday a week before. I'm giving myself a birthday gift by going to Japan. So I get to Japan. 3 things happen that really solidified 10/9 for me. All right. I go into a restaurant, and there's a usher who seats me at seat number 10. And I had been studying the Japanese language, so when I saw the seat number as it was written in Japanese, it's like a cross. I knew that I was seated in seat number 10 because I had been studying the numbers. Um, and then what was also interesting is that the numbers were written in Japanese, and also Japanese is written from right to left. So, so these numbers were written in ascending order from right to left. So to the right of the number 10 was the number 9. And so when I looked up, I saw 10 and 9 written in Japanese, and I was like, that's my birthday. And I thought it was peculiar that the usher had seated me in seat number 10 because the restaurant was basically free. It was open. There were a lot of seats. he could have seated me anywhere. And I think he sat me 2 seats from another customer. And I was like, okay, I'll sit wherever you tell me to, but like we had a whole restaurant. You could have seated me anywhere, but he seated me there at number 10. I look up and I see 10-9, right? So that was the first moment. 10-9 on my birthday weekend, pre-birthday weekend visit to Japan. So I eat at the ramen restaurant. I'm in seat number 10. I take a picture just to note, document the the coincidence. You know, 10-9 is my birthday, and I'm seated in at seat 10. I look up, I see 10-9. Okay, there we go. When I was leaving Japan after my weekend stay, I noticed that the ferry that I was riding from Japan back to Korea was ferry number 10-9 or 109. And I was like, here we go again. What are the odds? What are the chances? Isn't that bizarre? Here are those numbers again. And for me, I'm not looking at it like, okay, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's just how numbers go. No. When I at the restaurant, you could you could ignore the numbers 10 and 9 and say, "Oh, you're always going to find those numbers. They're everywhere. You're always going to find the same numbers, right?" But in the restaurant situation, he seated me at number 10, seat number 10. And instead of the numbers reading 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 from left to right so that it would read 9, 10, it read 10, 9, just like my birthday, okay, at the restaurant. But on the boat, on the ferry, when I looked at my ticket to see what ferry number I was on, it was like why do these numbers matter in Japan? Because here they are again, 1, 0, and 9. It was just very bizarre to see the numbers again. I took a picture of my ticket and I was like, yeah, that's wild. Those numbers are right there again. And these numbers were not 901 or 910 or 019. No, it was 1, 0, and 9. I was just like bugging. And then the third time, after the ferry arrived in Korea, I had to take a train back to my dorm, back to my town, back to my home, and I bought the ticket to get on the train. So I went to the train track. So I was focused on the train track, the number of the train tracks first. Then I was focused on which car on the train I would sit in. So as I'm studying the ticket, I'm like, all right, let's go to this number train track. Then let's go find this car. And then finally, it was let's look for this row. What row was it? Again, I was assigned a seat in row 10. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is bizarre because this is my birthday. This is my pre birthday weekend. And I keep running into numbers that allude to my birthday on 10-9. I'm like, yo, this is crazy. So, anyway, in each instance, because they were unique moments where I was mindful of these numbers, I would take pictures of what I saw each time I saw 10-9. And those were 3 moments during my pre birthday weekend that had me saying, damn, your birthday is coming up. I could see it everywhere. Everything was reminding me of my birthday, basically. So that was quite interesting. All right, so that was in 2015. Though. Those 3 events happened in my pre birthday week celebration in Japan, right? It was like Japan was actually celebrating my birthday with me. 2016, I'm in Saudi Arabia. And these 10-9 moments continued in Saudi Arabia because one thing in particular happened. I traveled from Saudi Arabia to the country of Sri Lanka, which only a few, like within the last 2 to 3 weeks or a few months or so, I learned that Sri Lanka is where serendipity comes from. The word serendipity. There's a story, and the story about some kings or something. Serendipity. That's where it comes from. Because my story at 10-9, finding 10-9 is about serendipity. And I went to Sri Lanka. I had no idea serendipity comes from Sri Lanka. Anywho, I go to Sri Lanka, but I don't see 10-9. I don't have any weird moments where I see 10-9. I went to the casino when I was in Sri Lanka, but yeah, I did see 10 and 9 when I was playing blackjack at the casino. Um, but it didn't make a difference. It didn't stand out to me. It's not like I won playing a hand of blackjack and I won with 19 like 10 times in a row. Like no, nothing like that. It was just like I was playing the game and there was 10-9 in front of me. It was like nothing. But that was it. But for my whole trip to Sri Lanka, nothing happened. Nothing stood out to me regarding 10-9. And so when I flew back from Sri Lanka to Saudi Arabia, I thought I was cured of my obsession with 10 and 9 because I had seen it in Japan. I had seen 10-9 in Korea, or there were just moments that alluded to those numbers 10 and 9, so much so that my experiences in particular countries was marked by a 10-9 occurrence, a 10-9 coincidence, a 10-9 encounter. And so, that being said, I um I was expecting something to happen with 10-9 in Sri Lanka, and when it didn't happen, I thought maybe I was free of the spell that I was under, this 10-9 spell. I was free. I was like, oh man, I'm good. I was making up how important 10 and 9 is, or how ubiquitous it is, and how often it would come and interact or find me. I was making that stuff up because it didn't happen in Sri Lanka. See, I'm good. And like, just when I was saying that, just when I was thinking that, just when I had that particular thought, I was standing outside of the airport in Saudi Arabia waiting for my taxi, waiting to be matched with a taxi. And the taxi that I was matched with, as I'm sitting there, as I'm standing there waiting for a taxi, thinking to myself, I'm free of this 109 obsession, fixation, encounter, whatever. The taxi that pulls up to pick me up has a license plate that begins with 10 and 9. And I start like tripping. I'm like, are you kidding me? I thought I was finished with 109. And here it is, right here, the taxi. My taxi has 109 on the license plate. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. And so I start like scrambling to explain what happened. And to me, I'm saying to myself, you know what? This is quite bizarre because if I had stepped out of the airport like a minute earlier or a minute later, and if I had stood in that line waiting for that taxi a minute earlier or a minute later, the taxi that I got with 109 on the license plate, that would have gone to someone else. It would have gone to another passenger. But because I was where I was at that particular moment, I got taxi with license plate number 109. Like, oh my gosh. So there I was in Saudi Arabia, and I was like, I am not free of this. It still is going to haunt me. Taxi 109, chair number 10 next to number 9, a reservation, a train or a plane ticket reservation in seat number 10 next to number 9. Like, it was just all 10-9. But it wasn't happening every day. It wasn't happening all of the time. There were just these like really mindful moments where I was like, it's happening again. Look, there it is. These were moments like in 2015 when I was on the train, I was all by myself staring out a window and I was thinking about, hey, this is interesting. I'm in row 10. You know, it was just something for me to think about. When I was at the restaurant, at the ramen restaurant in Japan, and the guy seated me at number 10, I just noticed it like, this is interesting. I'm all alone. He seats me at number 10, and the way the Japanese write the numbers, I can easily see 10 and 9. These are just the thoughts that I had, these internal thoughts like, look at that. Look at what I noticed. So that was what happened. Now, 2016, I'm in Saudi Arabia. 2017, I go to Ethiopia. I travel. 2017, I go to Mexico. I go to Cuba. And I go to Peru. And in each of the countries, I have a 10-9 moment. In Mexico, I go to Frida Kahlo's, the Blue House. The Uber driver is listening to radio station 100.9 on the FM dial. I go to Cuba. I get a book about Che Guevara, Cuban revolutionary, and I discover that he was killed on 10/9 or October 9th, 1967. I just picked up the book and started reading it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, look at this. And then I'm in Peru. And I'm hiking up Machu Picchu for the first time in my life. And I get to the top of the mountain and I check my watch to see what time did I arrive. Basically, I arrived at like 10:09 a.m. And I'm like, I'll be damned. 10 and 9. Mexico, Cuba, and Peru, 2017. Like, wow, that's bizarre. In 2018, I travel more. Let me go back. 2017, I traveled to 17 countries. You see, after 2015 and the most travel that I had ever done up until that time was like 7 or 8 countries in one year. So I tried to outdo myself. In 2017, I was getting so much money in Saudi Arabia that I was like, I got to travel more. So I traveled to 17 countries in 2017 and I kept seeing 10-9. Let me see. Of the 17 countries, yeah, 17 countries in 2017. I went to Bahrain on a weekend trip. I walked into my hotel room and I saw 109 on the television. The television was turned off. It was a satellite box above the television and it was set at frequency 109. Unbelievable moment. It's like, oh my gosh. So Bahrain, Mexico, Cuba, Peru, I all had 109 moments there. Let's see, 2017, I went to so many countries. Where else did I go? 2017. In Los Angeles. Um, Mexico, yeah. 2017, Germany. 2017, Egypt. 2017, I was back in 2017, I was back in Japan. 2017. In 2017, I might have, when I went back to Japan, I might have taken a picture at the Apple store. I'm not sure if it was 2017 or 2015, but I took a picture at the Apple store when the devices, I took a picture of an iPad when it was 10:09 a.m. So I was at the Apple store around 10 a.m. And when the clock struck 10:09, I took a picture of the Apple iPad with 10:09 on the display. So that was kind of a moment of synchronicity to be at the Apple store and for like all of the devices to be set at 10:09 a.m. Like, oh, look at that. Um, Japan, Bahrain, Mexico, Cuba, Peru. Where else did I go? Tanzania. That was 2018. Whew. 2017. Asia, Japan, Thailand. 2017. No, I didn't go to Thailand that year. Um, Peru. Yeah, I already did that. England. 2017. How did I go to 17 countries and I can't even figure out which 17 I went to? Mexico, Cuba, Peru, America, Bahrain. I went to Qatar. I went to Oman. I had already been living in Saudi Arabia, Bahrain. All right, I just listed 9 countries right there. I went to Turkey in 2016. Turkey 2016, December. It was Christmas Day when I was in Turkey. 2016 though. 2017 I went to Egypt. That's 10 countries. Um, 7 more countries. Where did I go? I think I landed in Germany in 2017. Germany, um, England, 2017. I had a layover in England. Um, where else? Countries. England, Germany. I might have had a layover in Kuwait. Did I have a? I think I've only ever had one layover in Canada, so that doesn't count. Kuwait. Um, that's like 12 now, I think. Morocco, that was 2018. 2017, Japan. Man, I usually have a list of these so I know which countries I've been to, but 17 countries in 2017, and I was only able to list at most, let's say conservatively 11. I was only able to list 11 countries. Wait a minute, but when I flew to Peru, I had a layover in Panama. All right, so that adds to it. Panama. Where else? Anything else? Anything else? I don't know. All right. So I was trying to run down the numbers of the 17 countries I went to in 2017. I couldn't do it. All right. So after that, let's get into 2018. Now, in 2018, something miraculous, something strange happened. I went to Ethiopia. Oh, I forgot. In 2017, I went to Ethiopia. I went on the tour in Ethiopia, right? So in 2018, I went back to Ethiopia. I actually went to Tanzania, but I flew Ethiopian Airlines, so I stopped in Ethiopia in Addis Ababa. Now in 2018, I was in Ethiopia at Addis Ababa University. I was on the second floor where the museum is located. I was looking at the museum articles, the little artifacts or whatever, when I had to use the restroom. I excused myself and I searched for the restroom. The restroom was on the second floor, and I was walking down the corridor to go to the restroom when I passed the door. I walked past the door where someone had written the numbers 1, 0, and 9 over the door. And it caught my attention. I said, holy shit. Look at this. Look at this. Well, I'll be damned. Here we go again. Now I'm in Ethiopia and I still see those same damn numbers. That's bizarre. And there they were. I took a picture of it. I had no one to ask. I had no idea why the hell those numbers are there. But it made me feel like 109 is my magical number because no matter where I traveled in the world, I just kept running into that number. It that's just the way it was. And now that's just the way it was for me. It was just like, wow. It just kept happening. 109, 109. So there I was in Ethiopia. I had no answers. All I had was a new picture with evidence of 109, and that was it. I just documented it, put it away, and moved on. Enjoy my day, enjoy my tour, my time. I'm good, right? That was 2018. 2018, I left Saudi Arabia in November. On November 3rd, I left Saudi Arabia and went back to America. In America, I went back to Washington, D.C., visit my uncle, visit my family in D.C., look at the sights, look at um, the nation's capital, do all that good stuff. All right, I'm finished with D.C., head back to Los Angeles. 2018, 2018, I go to Costa Rica. I go to Costa Rica for the first time in 2018, and the idea is to stay in the jungle for free. So I stay in the jungle for 3 weeks in Costa Rica. I was trying to make it a month, but I couldn't do it. I stayed there for 3 weeks. 3 weeks in the jungle of Costa Rica, and then I went to Panama, and then I went to Colombia, and how long did I stay out? 5 weeks, 6 weeks? I don't know. I stayed a while in South America. And then I was, although I wasn't spending a lot of money, I was still spending money, still spending my savings in South America, which wasn't cool. So I had to get back to making money because I didn't want to be poor. So I left South America, left Colombia, and I flew back to Los Angeles where I had an interview for a job in a country I had heard so many good things about when I lived in Saudi Arabia. And that country is called Oman. I learned that many of the teachers I met in Korea, well, they were working in Oman. I learned that and I thought that's pretty cool. That's pretty awesome. I have a family, I have connections, I've got people I can talk to in Oman. I can rely upon. So what I did is I interviewed for the job in Oman. I don't think I did very well, but they were willing to hire me anyway. I guess I didn't do as badly. I guess I'm just too critical of myself, right? Because they hired me. So I get hired to go to Oman, and then the 109 instances start to peak. They increase in frequency in Oman for some reason. Like, oh, whoa, wild things happen. I fly from America to Oman on KLM, Royal Amsterdam, Royal Dutch Airlines KLM, right? I stop in Amsterdam and then I continue on to Oman. I get to Oman. I go to the hotel in Muscat, sleep one night. Then the following morning, I have to go to the headquarters, the company's headquarters, to fill out paperwork, sign my work contract, and all that kind of stuff. I'm on my way to the headquarters when outside of the headquarters I see a car parked. The car's license plate is 10914. 109, that's my number. I immediately say, "Oh my gosh, those are my numbers." Now, at this point, after having seen my numbers in so many countries in so many situations, the thing about it is those are my numbers. And so time and time again, I have seen those numbers and I have developed this habit of ascribing good meaning to these numbers. Now, I can't when by the time I'm in Oman, I can't tell you why I see these numbers, what these numbers mean. I can't tell you what it means for anyone to see a particular set of numbers. I can't tell you. I can't explain any of this stuff. All I know is that I'm having this experience again where I'm seeing these numbers. And now I'm in a different country, right? Oman. But I look at it as a good omen, like, okay, this is good. Now, my feelings at the time when I was in Oman, I had already lived in Saudi Arabia and gotten some big bucks over there, and now I'm in Oman. I felt like for the rest of my life, I'll be chasing dollars from country to country in all different sorts of scenarios. I'm just going to be chasing dollars. That's the way I felt. So I was sort of like, ho hum, monotonous life. Here I go, signing another contract to work for some other people who want me to teach English. Oh, okay, here we go. And when I saw outside of their office, I saw the number 109. It made me think to myself, that's an omen. That is telling me to cheer up. Look on the bright side. Those are your numbers. Your numbers are a good sign. You see them all these different countries. It's a good sign. Okay? So that's what that 109 had become to me. And even though I wasn't in the best of spirits when I was walking into the headquarters to sign this contract, 109 helped me perk up a little bit. I said, that's interesting. All right, so that was the first time I saw 109 in Oman on my way to the headquarters to sign my work contract for 1 year, right? Then the next time I saw 109 in Oman, um, it was April 1st, the day that Nipsey Hussle was murdered. I learned of Nipsey Hussle's murder from Instagram. The day that he had been murdered, I woke up, I looked at my phone, my cell phone, I went to Instagram, and I discovered that Nipsey had been murdered. I was saddened, and because I was saddened, excuse me, I cried. Um, yeah, I was scrolling through Instagram, and I saw friends posting. He said, Prayers up for Nipsey. He was a really good dude." I was crushed. I was like, "Dang, man." Nipsey was shot on March 31st, 2019, but I was in Oman, which is 11 hours ahead of Pacific Standard Time. So it was already April 1st the next day, right? So within an hour of getting of learning what happened to Nipsey Hussle in Los Angeles, I woke up, I got dressed, showered, got dressed, and I was making my way out of the house. Jumped in the car, and I was driving to work. And it was only a short drive. I drove to work every day, maybe like 8 minutes, 8 minute drive at the most. At the most 10 minutes. On that particular day that I learned of Nipsey Hussle's murder, On my way to work, um, okay, you need some more details. Every day that I left for work, I left no later than 7:30 a.m. No later than 7:30 a.m. I think classes began at 8 a.m. So that gave me plenty of time to get to work, grab a bite to eat, get to class. 30 minutes, that's all I really needed, right? So I would leave at 7:30 a.m., no later than 7:30 a.m. At that time, in the desert of Oman, Oman is in the Middle East, okay? It's a desert city. It's a desert country. The city I was in is called Nizwa, and it was yeah, it's not very populated, not many people, or whatever. Anyhow, the streets in the morning, the streets are not crowded. There's nobody on the streets basically. One or two cars. It's not. There are not a lot of cars on the road, right? So I was bugging when I was saddened by Nipsey Hussle's news of his death. I'm driving to work, a short drive to work, and there's this truck on the road. I don't usually see trucks, but on this particular day, there's a truck, and the truck is barreling down the road, and my car and the truck, well, we're going to meet at the roundabout. Now, at the roundabout, you have to be cautious. You got to be careful because you have to slow down for cars that are entering the roundabout. Man, this truck wasn't slowing down, and I was in the roundabout, making my round when this truck just enters the roundabout and cuts me off. And I'm like, oh, snap. This guy doesn't care about how he's driving. He was an Indian man. I think there were a few Indians in his truck. He was just barreling down the road trying to get to work or whatever, like I'm trying to get to work. But he was speeding and he entered this roundabout not caring about, traffic laws or whatever. So I was saddened by Nipsey Hussle's news of Nipsey Hussle. And then when this car cut me off, I was angry. But then I looked at I mean, it wasn't a car, it was a big ass truck that cut me off. Big dump truck. So I was saddened, but then I was angry, but then I felt calm. I felt this calmness wash over me because when I saw the license plate, his license plate number was 1090. And I couldn't explain why I was there in that moment because I was thinking about how frivolous, how flimsy life is. I think Dave Chappelle said that. Life is flimsy. You think you're gonna be here long, but you could be here and then be gone like that. So I felt that way. I was like, damn. The last time I saw 109 was when I signed the contract to work in this country. Here I am seeing 109 the day that Nipsey Hussle is murdered, and what I'm thinking about is how life is so flimsy. But I but on that day I was thinking about Nipsey, and I was thinking about how odd it was for me to have seen those numbers on that day, 109. I thought, man, that's crazy. And then I guess I like spiraled into this statistical quandary. Like, what are the odds that any given car, would have the license plate 109 or any three-digit number? Like, what's the probability of that? And that question led me to the discovery of the Benford Newcomb Benford-Newcomb theorem, Benford-Newcomb formula, Benford-Newcomb. I forgot the name of it. Anyhow, if you plug the numbers in, it'll tell you the likelihood that you will encounter a particular number. Benford-Newcomb, that's what it is. Benford-Newcomb law. The Benford-Newcomb law is a statistical law that will tell you, for instance, excuse me, it'll tell you that numbers that start with 1, like the number 1, like the number 100, like the number 1000, like the number 1,000,000. Numbers that start with 1, well, they are 33% likely, more likely to be discovered. You could look at a data set, a set of numbers, and you're going to find 33%. Like, this is a law. This is how it happens. 33% of the time, you're going to find those numbers are going to start with the number 1. You could look at a lot of numbers. 33% of the time, they're going to start with the number 1. And then other numbers like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, the percentages drop off incredibly. Number 1 is the most repeated or the most ubiquitous number, right? At the beginning of any number. 33%. All of the other numbers, the probability that you will find any number that starts with any other number, it's going to be less than 10%. In many cases, less than 5%. So basically, what's happening here is I've used this statistical law to explain, hey, there is a reason why you keep seeing 109, because it's a high probability that you were going to see a number that starts with 1 in the first place because of this law, this statistical law. 33%. So when I walk outside of my door, I've got like a 33% chance of seeing any number that starts with 1. 1, 2, 3, 1, 5, 6, 1, 7, 9. It doesn't matter. You got a 33% chance of finding a number that starts with 1. Okay, fine. Fine. But what's crazy is when if you're not only looking for one particular number, but you're looking for a 3-digit number. See, as you start searching for a special combination of numbers, their probability, the likelihood that you will find that special 3-digit number, no matter what 3-digit number it is, the probability drops off precipitously, right? If you're looking for any number that starts with 1, you got a 33% chance. That's a huge probability. Like, you're going to find a number that starts with 1 anywhere, right? But if you're looking for 3 digits in a particular order, the probability of you finding it shrinks to less than 1%, which if you think about it, that's damn near impossible. Damn near impossible to find less than 1%. But if we go back to my experiences, you'll discover I must have like a radar for these numbers or I must be a magnet for these numbers because I just keep finding myself encountering them. Like, there goes 109, there's 109, there's 109. Like, yo, what's up with dude? Dude just keeps finding 109. And this story about April 1st, 2019, hours after Nipsey Hussle was murdered, where I'm driving down a road and they're not there aren't thousands of cars on the road with me. You know, if you have thousands of cars on the road, you've got the possibility of actually finding that special 3-digit number because you're looking at many different, cars. You got so many opportunities. But when those opportunities are limited to just one vehicle, that's when the peculiar nature of these 109 encounters really that's when it really hits differently. It's like this is an unbelievable story because this guy just keeps finding these three numbers, and here's a moment when it's damn near impossible to predict what three numbers are going to be on this vehicle. And sure enough, those three numbers are on that truck. Like, that's bizarre. That's extremely bizarre. But it's true. That's exactly what happened. So in that moment that truck cut me off, there was calmness. Calmness washed over me, and I felt serene. I was saddened, I was angry, but then I also felt as if everything in the world was just how it needed to be. Everything had its place. I felt as if God was in control of everything. I didn't feel like the world was falling apart. I felt like it was Nipsey's time. That's why he was taken from us, as bizarre as that might sound. I remember even looking at different videos of Nipsey around that time and just thinking to myself, he looks tired. He looks tired. He doesn't look happy. Like that's what I saw when I saw these images or whatever. So um I was like, wow. So he's no longer here because he, finished his mission. These are the ideals that I was thinking of when we lost him. And I guess in that moment when that car cut me off, because I felt the presence of God, I started to scramble for ideas to understand what was happening. Why had I seen 109 the day that Nipsey Hussle had died? Why had Nipsey Hussle's murder affected me so deeply? Why? Well, when I thought about those questions, when I thought about why, I kept going back to the fact that I had seen 109 in Ethiopia. And I was thinking about what Ethiopia means to me. And I was also thinking about the other events that occurred in the same month that we lost Nipsey and how those events focused on East Africa or just Ethiopia or Ethiopia and Eritrea. And it was just a bizarre state of affairs that my attention in the month of March 2019, my attention was squarely on Ethiopia because the Ethiopian airplanes had crashed that month. Because I was uh, I was acutely aware of uh, the um, the anniversary of the Battle of Adwa that is celebrated every month, and then Nipsey Hussle was murdered. Like all of these events, just all centered on East Africa, and it was just like, why is there so much interest or so much focus on East Africa? And then it was like, oh, I get it. Nipsey had to have been Jesus. Nipsey had to be. Nipsey was God Will Rise. Ermias was God Will Rise. Why was I such a fan? Why was I so hurt by his murder? Because He was God. He was Jesus. He walked the earth. He was just this profound figure with connections to Ethiopia, with connections to the biblical Queen of Sheba, because Ethiopia and his father's country of Eritrea, they were once the empire, the Aksumite Empire. Everything, it just all seemed to make sense. It made very clear sense to me that if Ethiopia was central to the Bible, to the stories of the Bible, that we had an empire that's in the Bible, that's mentioned in the Bible, and we had a young man whose name was God Will Rise. I thought he was anointed. He's a part of the Bible. We're living in biblical times, and we're looking at a Jesus figure, a Christ-like figure in Nipsey. It was the message on the day that Nipsey was murdered. To me, it was Nipsey was Jesus, because his death, it was just a strange feeling. Like, how did this man's death affect me so deeply? I never met him. I didn't even like his music. I wasn't a fan of his music for a long time because he was talking about gangster stuff, right? I had my reasons because his neighborhood is dangerous. I had my reasons for not gravitating towards his music. But anyway, but that was the message I got the day that Nipsey was murdered. And then the wildest thing is I saw 109 as if it were something very, I guess, divine on that day. And then I had a highly strange experience 7 days after Nipsey's murder when I looked into the sky and I saw a cross in the sky. And then that cross for me was confirmation from God that that the conclusion I had arrived at was the right conclusion, that it was true. Because here's what happened. Those lines in the sky had never appeared before or after 7 days after Nipsey's death. So it was exactly 7 days, and it was never before then or after then that I saw lines like those in the sky. Okay. I tried to understand how those lines got there. I tried to say, well, maybe airplanes flew overhead to create those lines. But the problem with that ideal is that those airplanes would have had to have flown overhead within minutes of me exiting my home, looking up in the sky and seeing them that day. And that was impossible, period. It was impossible because of the city where we lived in, airplanes don't fly overhead. They do, but they don't. They do fly over at like 35,000 or 38,000, 40,000 feet. That's a considerable altitude, elevation. But these lines weren't at that elevation. These lines were much closer to the ground, or at least they appeared to be far closer to the ground. You know, let me explain that. If a plane is traveling at like 30,000 feet, it looks tiny. These lines were not tiny. These lines were thick. They were like big lines, visible, clearly visible. So they didn't look like they were really, really high in the sky. They looked like they were like about, if anything, they were like 10,000 feet. Maybe not even 10,000, 1,000 feet. You know, about 1,000 feet off the ground. That's how close they looked. And then the idea that the airplanes that fly overhead don't even fly over at the elevation that these lines were at. The lines, the way that they appeared, also, it was a cloudy day, and these lines looked as if the clouds had been removed where the lines were. Oftentimes when you see condensation trails, you see lines that have been drawn on clear skies. There are no clouds, and you see a white line in the sky. So it's the inverse of it. Well, this looked like the lines had been removed. Kind of like if someone were snorting cocaine, let's say a whole table was filled with cocaine and then you snort, you suck it up. It's like sucking it up. You remove the cocaine, you remove the powder. That's what the clouds look like. They look like they had been removed to reveal a cross in the sky. It was the most bizarre sight. For the timing of the sighting, for what I was seeing, it was completely bizarre. It was like, how the heck did that get there? And it was 7 days after Nipsey's murder. It was like, it's perfect timing. The image is of a cross, and I got the message Nipsey was Jesus, a cross, Jesus, and 109. Put them together, you got something. You got a sign from God. Nipsey, 109, the cross. You got something there. And then it was weeks later when I discovered that 109, at least for this company in Colorado, Philippe's 109, they make tacos and burgers and food in Colorado. I asked the guy, the owner, I said, Philippe, I said, why did you name your company 109? He said it's a reference to Romans 10:9. And I had to look it up and see what the heck that was all about. It says, if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe with your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. That's Romans 10:9. So I was like, oh my gosh. I'm looking at this number 10:9. I'm looking at Nipsey and I'm looking at a cross in the sky, trying to make sense of it. And now I learned that Romans 10:9 is a really popular biblical verse related to Jesus. I said, my presumption that Nipsey was Jesus was the right message that I was supposed to get. The cross in the sky 1 week, 7 days later was confirmation that I got the right message. Finding Romans 10:9 was another confirmation that the message that I got was the message that needed to be shared. Oh, it was powerful. It was powerful.
You're at 109 right now.
So where I am today is 6 years, 7 years, 2021, 6 years removed from the revelation of what 10:9 means, of who it was for. It was for me to spread this gospel. Um, yeah, we're 6 years removed, and 10:9 moments of 10:9 are still happening to me. I still find myself assigned to a seat in row 10 or 9. I still, when I went to Ethiopia 3 years ago, we had to go to gate number 10 to get matched with our flight, the airplane. After going to that gate, when I got on board, I had a seat assignment in row 9. A couple of months ago, I was in Colombia and I was about to board the plane, and I was trying to find the the counter so I could meet with someone to drop my bag, put my luggage on the plane. I looked at the information board and it said that my airlines was checking bags at counters 10 and 9. I said, whoa, look, there it is, 10 and 9. These are assignments. These are where these places, this is where these things are told to happen at 10 and 9. Not where I want them to happen. I didn't ask. I'm not doing any of this. This is just me running into these numbers again. I was in Colombia and I was sipping on some coffee and I was looking straight ahead when I took a sip of coffee. I turned around and I looked out the window. Well, not the window, but I looked out onto the street. And in that moment, bus number 109 passed by. I was with my colleague in Colombia and I was telling him about how I was in Saudi Arabia waiting for a taxi and taxi number 109 pulled up, or the taxi with license plate 109 pulled up. And my colleague was like, "Oh, that's interesting." We jump in a taxi. No, the taxi wasn't 109. The license plate did not read 109. But we jumped into a taxi. And as we're riding to our hotel, my colleague says, "Hey, look at the taxi next to us." It was taxi number 109. And 109 was on the door, it was on the license plate, it was everywhere. It was just like, look, that's taxi 109 right there. We found it. So it continues to happen. It just continues to happen. Um, and 2009 was that moment when Nipsey, The Cross, and 109 all converged. They they those three entities were clear in my mind in the desert of Oman. Crazy thing happened. I was back in Los Angeles when those three entities, every day I see those three entities. I drive down Crenshaw Boulevard. I see that address 6109. I see a cross on the building next to the building 6 with address 6109. And then there's a playground where there was a mural dedicated to Nipsey Hussle. It's no longer there, but those three things that I saw in the desert, I see them right here in Los Angeles. And I don't have to look for them. They were right there, right next to each other. 1, 2, and 3. Not like it's over here, it's over there, and it's over there. No, it was right there, there, and there. Like all together. The same three things I saw in the desert, they were right there in front of me. I said, oh man, what I saw in the desert, I'm getting confirmation again that what I saw in the desert was important for me to have seen, because here it is right here, right in front of my face, in halfway around the globe. And then if that isn't enough to convince you, it's the idea that I found Jean-Michel Basquiat's painting. I looked at it one day and I said, that's interesting. Jean-Michel wrote my numbers 109 on that painting. That's my favorite painting. But then after that, I watched a music video by Nipsey Hussle and I say, oh my gosh, that video has a picture of Nipsey in it that reminds me of Basquiat's painting. So then the subtle conclusion is that painting and that picture are one and the same. The painting is of Nipsey. Look at the painting and the picture side by side, you will see the similarities. And I'm like, all right, let me check this out. Let me do this. I start looking at the painting, and then it becomes clear to me that the painting and the words that Jean Michel Basquiat chose to write on his painting, well, they relate directly to Nipsey Hussle's life, as if it were a premonition, as if it were a prediction of what was to happen. So bizarre. I'm not going to get into those details. I need to get some rest, but that painting and the picture are one and the same. It's Nipsey Hussle in the painting. And then the smoking gun, the reason why I know that it is the truth, Nipsey Hussle's signature is on the painting. Nipsey Hussle's signature is on the painting. You've got all these words that relate to Nipsey Hussle. But if you look at the painting, you might say the painting, the figure, the male figure doesn't even look like Nipsey. You're imagining things. Like, okay, fine, you might say that. But if you look at it, you look at the words, if you study his life and you know what happened to Nipsey, you know that those words match up. They line up to Nipsey's life precisely. And then you look at the signature on the painting and you're like, or rather you look at those lines on the painting and you look at Nipsey's signature. Oh my gosh, you're gonna find that they undeniably, no one can deny that they do not share marked similarities. It's really, really deep. It's very deep. It's very deep, or maybe it isn't deep at all. It's very plain to see. It's obvious. But the only person who cares about it is me, because I see it. I see it. I see 109. I see 109 means I saw divinity. I saw Jesus in Nipsey. Hell, he was from the country where, you know, one of the oldest Bibles, one of the oldest Christian nations in Africa is. Makes sense to me. I saw a cross in the sky. Makes sense to me. I kept seeing 109. I didn't know what it meant until someone told me Romans 10:9. That's a reference to Jesus. Makes sense to me. Nipsey, a black man from Africa. Makes sense to me. He's preaching. He's talking about the Bible. He's talking about your higher self. He's talking about like life and being your best version of yourself. I think that's what God wanted us to be. That sounds like Jesus' message right there. Jesus, Nipsey, 109 makes sense to me. Why would Basquiat paint? Why would there be connections between Basquiat's painting and Nipsey Hussle? Because the spirit was working through Basquiat. The spirit was working through Nipsey. The spirit is alive and well. The Holy Spirit. Everything that you hear about, like everything that you learn about, it's real. It's real. We're not playing. No, there are no games here. This is the real ish. The real ish, yo. All right, that's about it. That's all I guess I'm going to talk about. We're going to have to move on from this. Peace and blessings from IC 109.
You're at 109 right now.